Okay. All right. So we're going to discuss the deacons, and me and Ashley and I, we use, not we use, well, gosh, we must be in a time of resourcefulness. So we use, yeah. Okay. Get that. We use, it's a time of resourcefulness because this is some intense time for us because you're not looking at the same type of energies that we used to. You're looking at some I am stuff, and that's Aries. And a lot of the astrologers have been talking about the Mars in cazimi. I mean, the Mars cazimi, where Mars is dying from an old state to a new. So when I heard about that, I want to say from Molly McCord or from Lunatic Astrology and some of the others, want to give credit to them. Um, I began to think about the clash of the Titans. And Mars is it how would I say this here? Scorpio is a Plutonian um symbol, but Hades and Mars, they come together. And I've taught classes where I told them I kind of feel like Mars is a younger part of Hades. So I'm up here looking at the Clash of the Titans because I've always talked about the pantheon and the gods in Greek mythology. Why? Because they have been energies that I kind of dreamt of from a very young age. I would dream about these energies that I didn't know anything about, and I found out they were in the sky when I was younger. So anyway, um, Scorpio for me and Ashley, for example, is our moon sign, and Mars, um, it rules in that domain. Um, when I look at I look at some of us trying to figure out who we are at this point in time, which over maybe a decade where Pluto has been in Capricorn, whatever house that is for each of us, is having us to question ourselves, and we've had breakdowns in that house. It could be the sixth house for you. It was the first house for me. Um, it could be the seventh house for someone. Let me take this off. Um, that means that your natal chart is where you began the journey, but transiting, you have to keep up with where Mars is at. And Mars is dying in Scorpio. Um, and it's
Well,
going to
wait, Miss
rise
Ma'am.
again.
Wait, before you do that, because I think it might be helpful for people who watch this to understand something. So when we speak about Hades and Scorpio, those will be interchangeable terms, as well as Pluto, because Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Hades represents Pluto and Scorpio because it is death and rebirth. We associate Hades with hell. However, um, you have to die to be born again. When we plant seeds in the earth, when we're planting, as we all usually do when it gets nice outside, because we don't do it in the winter, which we're experiencing now, those seeds die and then become something else. I like to plant sunflowers, so I always like to watch the buds come up, and that's how I know new life is forming. So you have to think of that in the same way of your personality and your identity. These things have to go down into the depths, which is what Scorpio represents, which, as Ms. Kim has stated, that's our moon. So what we know is that our moon reflects our emotions. So we have to let those old emotions die for something new to be born into. Now, in relation to Mars and Aries, those will also be interchangeable terms because they represent the same thing. Aries rules Mars. So Mars is seen as an unstoppable force, which, in my opinion, makes sense that how you related it before, that Mars is like a younger version of Hades. Like Aries is a young version of that because you have this unstoppable force. You don't know what you're doing. You're just in a sense, right? And what you start to understand about your identity is those old things that I thought I was. Like when I was a kid, I was told that I was bossy. It wasn't that I was bossy, I was a leader. But I had to lose that persona of being bossy and that what people told me that I was to grow into and die into my true self of what I know myself to be a leader. And being a leader isn't about bossing people around, it's about recognizing there's an alternative path that we can take, and we all have different strengths that we can play into. So if instead of focusing on this area, we focus on that, we can achieve this goal. So as you're listening to this conversation, you might feel a little bit confused, but if you reference these moments that I've given to you, it might provide more clarity.
Right. So I like that you came in and brought that clarity because that's why, it helps so much to have more than one person that understands this information because one individual can't give everything at one time. However, when I look at I look at even over the 2020, the year 2020 to now, there's been 3 years that we have been redeveloping from a COVID shutdown. And a lot of people wanted to go back to work as usual, but nothing happens in the universe by chance. I want to say that my heart goes out to the wars that are happening. Nothing happens by chance. So there's a lot of cold-hearted information to give behind that. Not saying that um, the wars, I feel I want to judge them. I want to say that God judges and God allows everything to happen that happens. So the universe is orchestrating something greater for people. When I look at Aries, I look at I am again and the rebirthing of I am for Aries and everyone in the house of Aries. The rebirthing is what's going to take place, but the dying out is in Scorpio. So the dying out is necessary in order for a mature Aries to come forward. When I look at myself in this perspective, or actually, I look at the moon because it's our moon sign, and for me, it's 22 degrees, so it's going to affect my maturity level. It's going to affect my maturity level where it's going to break down and rebuild. And this has been going on over courses. So the degrees that Ashley have in her chart for the moon, I don't know, but it's intricately playing a part in mine, which will bring forth more wisdom, and anyone that has 22 degrees or 21 degrees, because that's where it's actually dying out. And this process is going on. You feel something leaving. You also felt something leaving from the new moon. So we have a lot of energy going on. Um, can I add that we feel the purging, which brings on symptoms in the body. Some of the Aries or Plutonian energy that you feel when there is a purge going on in your body, or when a Scorpio new or full moon comes around, is sinusitis symptoms. You get feelings of a head cold. Surely many people will say that there are flu symptoms, but the impact of Scorpio will happen in the face, and it also happens in the head, just like Aries. So Aries is the head. I'm going to go into something before the deacons, because as I was watching Clash of the Titan, that's my thing. I was reminded that even Aries in the I am place is kind of like I am the ram, and the Lamb of God is born. Here is a rebirthing of the Lamb of God. Someone in the world leadership positioning is dying out, and someone is coming into life. What I see dying out is a perspective of individuality where we're not interpersonally connected. I see that we're coming into individuality, but also interpersonal connection, because
Mhm.
in the past, the I am identity that the world gave us told us that we were individuals. We could do whatever we wanted to. And as we are human beings and we see things that are happening in the world, we judge, but we don't look at even ourselves and how we take on the thoughts of what's happening in the world. Meaning, if someone doesn't like the world going through war, then let's pray for peace, right? There is a solution. I always tell these young ladies that I work with and more, um, I'm not really into the problem. I see it, and we have to recognize the problem first so that we can come to an understanding of what the solution is going to be. So if there is a PREY, a prayer, or someone that's preying on an individual, the next solution or the solution would be we PRAY. So you might say, well, where is someone praying? Well, the wars are about prey because they're not going to tell you where they're going to attack. So, because they're not going to tell you where they're going to attack, and this is not a conspiracy, this is just something that you use in your everyday life, that you begin to keep your mouth closed about things that you're doing so that people that are weaker will not prey on your prayers and what you want to manifest. So, I am Aries. I feel is birthing in some of us on a more harmonious level. You know, if I prayed, I would say, let there be peace and let it begin with me. Let harmony rise. But when I also say that, I'm looking at me as an individual. You see, it can fly over our heads, but if I don't start with I am, about peace, then where can the identity of I am rise in me and Aries become more peaceful? It's a one individual thing, right? You want to add?
I just wanted to go back to when you were mentioning the shift from individuality to interpersonal. I'm noticing it so much more, like specifically in my generation. I think I'm referred to as like the millennial, where we are shifting into the idea that everything that happens to someone outside of me also happens to me and it affects me. And on social media, I'll see everyone posting like, specifically recently, we're all talking about the government shutdown, right? And how we've sent billions of dollars over for this war, but now we don't have money to run our own country. And so many people are like, I can see how many of you didn't pay attention in school to know that the billions that we're sending over there aren't just actual money, it's sometimes bodies. It is people, it is war, it is
Energy.
guns,
Hmm.
it is those things that we're sending over, and how all of that sending out leaves one us seen as a what are we seen as a world power vulnerable, right? So it's so many people in the comments that I'm reading saying how like we need to refocus on how we interact with the people in the world and refocus on how we even deal with each other in our own communities and how we support each other. So I just wanted to echo that point that there is such a shift in our mindsets, and that's what happens. And what we spoke about, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on Tuesday, that when you're not when you stop focusing on the immediate problem, because your problem is this big, but your solution can make you this big. So when you make that shift mentally for yourself, and if we're all collectively making that shift mentally, something has to happen because those people stuck in that paradigm will no longer be sustainable because they don't have the power. Our voices and the plans that we put in place and the things that we opt to do, if it's rioting, as long as it's organized, if it's protesting, as long as it's peaceful, and we're emulating what we want to see in the world, it's going to change. But it has to be not staying stuck in, well, this is the problem and this is what they've done in the past, so let's do it again. No, because we all know the definition of insanity is repeating what has been done and expecting something different. So I just wanted to say that because I thought that like that's really resonated with me this week about let me not focus on the problem. I need to focus on the solutions and how to make that change within myself. And I think it's just important to recognize, as you did, that it's happening collectively overall.
Okay, so I love that you brought that in, and it's necessary. And I want to add that some of the energies that we experience here with Aries being um, in the North Node, not to mention the Scorpio energy. Um, the North Node is in Aries. I'm sorry. It went into Aries. And so what that looks like is more wars. Why? Because it's a militia energy. It's about police, it's about military, and all of those energies. Okay, so does that mean it's going to be good or bad? And I, go and I agree with some of the astrologers again that we pray more. Aries is a energy that is about go, 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 as Ashley said, but we have to learn how to control that energy within ourselves and say, stop, listen, and think, right? And as we stop, listen, and think, that's where Aries begins to mature. My brother is an Aries, very hyper, and he will calm me to, I think, calm him down and make him think rationally. And that's what we have to do. It's not that we have to, but we have to begin to practice that. Now that's the maturity, because now I'm responsible for cussing somebody out when I could have kept my mouth closed. That's a part of Aries energy, argument and conflict. Become a conflict resolution type of individual. The other things is, but mechanics. I want to bring this in here because I just put my car in the shop today, where a week and a half ago I was traveling on the expressway coming home from work, and I had two cars on both sides of me, and a half of a truck tire was in my lane, and I had no choice but to run it over. So it tore the undercarriage of my SUV. Now,
Mm.
what did I do? Thought about how I was going to take care of it without getting upset, because practicing, meditation and prayer has brought me to a place where we're not going to panic, but we're going to look at the solution. So Aries deals with cars and the automobiles because it's a go. It's a go. But in
Mm.
order for it to go, you have to make it go, and you have to control it and stop it. So in this time, there's a lot of accidents and a lot of things that could happen with cars. Are we going to say that we want to talk about just the negative things? No, we're talking about the resolution of how wars can start just between me and Ashley here. It's a listening thing. It's a stop, reflect on what's being said, and ice the conflict. Because all of us have Aries in us, but where are we at with Aries, right? Now, we're going to say that we're back over here in Scorpio. And Scorpio with Aries can be abrupt and it can sting, but we're still talking the same language, because Hades, we don't want to look at Hades as bad, because anybody that grows up has good and bad. We always experience the bad journey in the beginning, but the bad journey is about no practicing the problem, but practicing to find a solution. So every mountain that you go around, you don't even have to call it bad. You can say that this is good, but where is the good in this mountain experience? Do I see the same experience? Do it look a little bit different? If it's not working for you, then that's where the change is. So Hades, Hades is the god of wealth. As Ashley brought up, let's break this down. He has been placed, so to speak, mythologically in the underworld. And I've told them, where do you find jewels at? You can find spiritual jewels in heaven, but you find the materialization of jewels in the earth, the underworld. They go down into the earth. Someone that I met recently was telling me about things that he's found in the ocean. So we're talking about Hades going deep, and we're not, putting Zeus in exile, but we want to look at the truth about the mythological characters and say, where are we as individuals? Now, as a Scorpio moon, I am deep, just like that. But I could stay deep with no resolve. Ashley could stay deep with no resolve, but we want to come up with our jewels. And that's what I push with these young ladies and those, men, wherever I go and I'm teaching or facilitating with therapy and groups. This is what I'm asking you to go deep and take out torment, that those brothers could have went through, or you and your brothers and sisters could have went through, and find the jewels in it. All right, I'm gonna go let you go.
So I want to also reaffirm that because it's not just about the actual material jewels that you get. It's
Mhm.
about the wisdom, the knowledge that you gain because as you're going through life, you make mistakes. This is the mountain that we speak about. We make mistakes. We go through cycles and patterns where we have similar outcomes and we're like, okay, well, I thought I made a left where I used to make a right and evidently I didn't. So now I need to do it again differently. And you come to know and understand more and more about yourself and more about interactions with other people. I have learned that I have to silence myself when I'm triggered, where I'm
Mhm.
usually very ready to defend myself and go hard. And then I get petty and I get nasty because my moon comes out and that Scorpio is going to sting. But I've learned I don't have to be reactionary in that part. It's not necessary. There are moments when it is necessary, but it's tactful. It's not to hurt, it is to inform someone, you have hurt me. That is not okay. And now I set a boundary for myself and I set a rule for you. So these are the things that you learn when you go into the underworld with yourself, as I do, and I'm sure as Miss Kim has done as a Scorpio moon, and you come up and then you're able to impart it like we're doing right now. We're giving you these little nuggets. Now, granted, you're kind of like, I don't think I know where this applies in my life. That's okay. As I said, we're planting a seed like we do. It's the winter, but well, the fall here, but it feels like winter. Um, we're planting a seed for you, and that seed is gonna go into you, and at some point it's gonna bud something. You're gonna go, I watched a YouTube about this. I heard a class about this. I got information about this, and now I finally get it. And that
Mm.
is where that jewel comes. And now you're sitting on something that you didn't even realize you needed, and it makes you more profitable because now your outlook on life changes, how you react in a workplace, how you react in your interpersonal relationships completely changes, which advances you in a different type of way and it sets you up in a different type of way. And I'll speak personally for myself, that type of transformation has been interesting to watch, but one of the most rewarding things because now I see it differently when I interact with my daughter, when I interact with my coworkers. I had a coworker reach out to me today. I've been frustrated with work, and she said, you've been very quiet. Complaining gets me nowhere. So I keep my
Mm.
head down. I do what I need to do. And when I need to move differently, I will, but I don't need to talk about it. I don't need to shout it from the mountain that I'm unhappy. If I'm unhappy, it's been made known.
Good deal. So
So,
let's shouting it from the mountain, and finding the solution. And sometimes the solution in situations like that is what you're doing, changing your mind. We change our mind because, of course, everything that we think we like, that comes to an end, doesn't it?
hmm
Okay, so let's look at Scorpio for me. Well, what's your degrees for your moon?
29.
Okay, so me and you are in the same place. It's critical. Um, yeah, it's critical. And this is a time where, a lot of thinking is necessary. And I went to astrologyk.com and I want to reference their work. I usually go to astroseeker.com for information. That's another one that you guys can use, and you can get your own chart where you can follow with the degrees. So I had began to teach them about the deacons because the deacons begin to give you another understanding of your personality. And so Scorpio of third deacon is where Ashley and I are, and that's November 13th through the 22nd. So we're in that season, and it's ruled by the moon at 20 degrees to 30 degrees. And it says herein, the third and last lunar deacon of Scorpio, influence will produce people of great emotional integrity, trusting every feeling that they have and seldom willing to compromise. I think that that's true. Um, willing to compromise, willing seldom to compromise, at least against any cold, dead reason. They have great drive and willpower. Now, this is the truth, but the thing about this deacon, if someone else wanted to write in or email us, my information is always in the box or description, but 22 degrees is what I have. And 22 degrees is a alchemy number. So in this deacon from the 13th to the 30th, what we have is the time where my moon, and I'm going to say her moon, I'm going to get to hers. My moon is telling me, even in this Aries energy, that the drive to change things is coming, which means to me, I need to be mindful of how I try to push strategies or projects that I'm working on. I need to be mindful, which is not something that I was 10 years ago. I came into the wisdom of just slowing down and dealing with it and keeping myself busy if something wasn't happening when I wanted it to, by refocusing. I had to learn patience. I had to adapt patience. I had to, really become acquainted with the fruit of the spirit in the Bible in Galatians 5. So a lot of prayer and meditation for myself. This is self-development because you can't alchemize anything um, and keep moving with that manifestation power without realizing the imperfections in you, right? And that's what I've learned from there. So 22 degrees um, is in between where this new moon came in. 21
Mm-hmm.
is where it was. And also the cazimi, I believe, is supposed to be in that same position. So here, there's been transformations going on with her and I, and they're in different houses, but this brings it home because our moon is saying, bring your emotions into integrity. There was a young lady that I used to work with years ago, Kamoy Knight, who told me, she said, you should learn about the moons and teach that. And so probably about 2 years ago, about five of us have been going around, and the moon energy is becoming more conscious to each and every one of us. So my hat off to her. And moving forward, Ashley at 29 degrees is a critical state because it's 11. And 11 is also about change. And so if there is anything or anyone out there that actually has 22 or 29, you would be looking at right now, it's not to me a gruesome thing. It's pulling yourself out of the world's idea of what's going on and getting into your spiritual understanding of what's going on. Because when you look at, or if you've ever studied the Greek gods or any of the other gods, but I want to look at them because our astrology natal chart is casted by the Greek gods. And as they are in the celestials, it's not to say that others are not, because the deities exist. There were African deities before and many more. But as we look at these deities, I am is referenced on a spiritual level, and I am is calling again back to the beginning. It's calling us back to the beginning to transform something that could come up critical in us, or something that we need change in. And that transformation is coming from within us, it's not coming outside. So you're sitting with yourself and you're saying, well, what do I feel when I'm changing something or transforming? You feel pain. It's like the butterfly. A prime example of the butterfly that comes out of being a caterpillar. Who thinks about the pain that this caterpillar is going through when it's birthing itself? And yes, there's a higher power, involved in this, but these higher powers and these spirits and angels that we talk about, we pray to, they're looking over us because they can't hinder the process of your growth, or you may not get the whole analogy or the story of what you're actually going through. Like the caterpillar could be saying, well, gosh, I was ugly yesterday and today I'm beautiful. And that's just a thought. I don't want to judge it because everything is beautiful. But the caterpillar could have said that a lot of people didn't realize yesterday how beautiful they are today. And it's because growth has came in. Back to you.
So I was gonna say, something you said that it's not gruesome, but it is. It is a gruesome process. And I say that because you're sitting by yourself and you're not, the conversation you have is with you. It's like you said, oh, I'm feeling pain, but what type of pain am I feeling? And why am I feeling that? And how do I change that? How do I let go of this pain and understand that it was necessary for me to grow and then grow into that? So it is a very, I say gruesome and grueling, though I don't mind sitting by myself and having these conversations because there's no one that knows me better than me. And it gives me a greater understanding to myself and what I project outwardly. And it also lets me know about the things like you have to be brutally honest. Like, I really don't like that about myself. Why don't I like that? Why is that a part of who I am still? Am I doing it for defense? What am I defending myself against? And yes, you can lead yourself down a very crazy rabbit hole, but you walk away with information about yourself. And I like fashion it against like a snake shedding its skin. When you're shedding that skin, that outer layer just doesn't fit anymore. It's not who you are anymore. You've grown and you've become something else. So if you held on to that skin, just like unfortunately it happens to us, we gain weight. If we keep trying to put on those skinny jeans that we can't fit anymore, we are uncomfortable. You can't sit down. You got to jump into them. Now you're stretching them out and you can't breathe and you look like a stuffed sausage. And it's just not a pleasurable experience for you. Just size up. And when you size up, now you're somebody different. You've put your grown up pants on. You've allowed yourself to grow into who you are. And it takes some adjusting. It's not to say you won't backtrack. It's not to say that you won't fall into old habits because we do. But that's why you create the new habits and you go through the pain of ripping out the things that shouldn't be there anymore in those full moons when you release and you purge and you cry and you get rid of and you just release. I realized for myself sometimes the moons happen opposite for me. So this has been a space where I'm purging and I'm crying and I'm releasing and I'm also in those moments acknowledging really beautiful situations around myself. Most importantly, what I'll speak to is my experience today. I had a parent teacher conference for my daughter, and I wanted to thank her teacher for being who she was because she's been consistent for the children when they haven't had consistency since COVID. So I thanked her, and in turn, she thanks me and she said, you don't know how many times I've read the messages that you've sent to me and how they encourage me on days when I don't feel confident. And
Mm-mm. Mm-hmm.
I, at the end of our conference, she came to me and she said, can I hug you? And I said, absolutely, you can. And we hugged and we shared a moment and it was so pure and it was so genuine. And she said, we have to stay in contact because she said, Mom, I respect you and I appreciate you so much. And you encourage me. And I have to see what comes of your daughter. I know she's going to do amazing things because I see how much you impart in her when I see her. And that was a beautiful moment for me because this woman just met my daughter this year and just met me. So to have someone see something that I've been working at and I've been pushing myself to be better at, um, it's been amazing. And Excuse me 1 second.
Mhm. And while Ashley's talking, or doing what she's having to do in the background, I wanted to bring up children that, life and death is in the power of the tongue. Birth is a transformation process because your body goes through all of these things. So here we are rebirthing a new part of ourselves. We've birthed children, some of us, and some have not. But just for her to bring up her daughter's teacher and what she's adding to her daughter's teacher is the ability for her teacher to see that someone cares about their children or someone cares about what's going on with teachers because teachers are going through a lot. And so you're back.
Sorry about that, but 100%, teachers are going through a lot, and that's one of the things that I've noticed since COVID. There's a teacher shortage, and they are overworked. They are exhausted. I joke with her when I usually get there to pick the kids up because school lets out at 3:30, but if I'm walking up at 3:15, her and the students are already outside. And I said, Miss Thomas, you tired of the kids already? She said, it's been a Monday. And sometimes I'm like, but they done had a few days off. She's like, it's been a Monday. And I always joke with her, like, it's okay if you're sick of them. Sometimes we get sick of them too, and they're ours. But to know how much she loves and cares about those students, for me as a mom, it makes me super like more comfortable to leave my daughter in her care because I know she's watching out for her. But also to know that I'm encouraging her in a place where she might
Mm-hmm.
not feel she might not feel encouraged all the time. And I send her messages. Sometimes it'll be 7 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just sending her a message, good morning, Miss Thomas. Just thank you so much for everything that you do. It's evident how much you care about the kids, and I appreciate that. Um, and that's something that I've adopted in my life overall, just to show people more appreciation for who they are and what they do, because they don't have to be those people and they don't have to do those things. So and it's such a small thing, but it means so much. In turn, at that same parent teacher conference, I remember the teacher telling Miss Thomas, you have one of the best moms in your class. And she was referencing me. And I hadn't had the opportunity to speak to her since I heard her say it. But I walked up to her and I said, Miss Scott, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for acknowledging me because I've been through, Miss Kim, as you know, it's been rocky for me as a mom, just because I'm my own worst critic. I'm super hard on myself, and I always feel like I need to push myself to be better, to do better, to be stronger. Um, so I don't always sit in that moment of, I am doing a good job. But I said to her today, I said, thank you for acknowledging that because though I've had my own personal struggles, um, that gave me a moment to pause and realize that I'm doing a good job and that other people see it. So I have to see it for myself. And I hugged her too because I'm a hugger. And it just made me appreciative in that moment to know not only does my daughter have a really awesome teacher, there's other staff there that know me and know my daughter and will always keep us in the loop and be a part of her support system. So it was really phenomenal for me to have that moment full circle in a place where I'm going through a personal transition and an emotional transition. And sometimes it feels like a career transition that I am, like I said, shedding an old skin. And it's like, wait, but I am really great at these things. And those parts of that old skin have to come with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So it's just been it's grueling because like I said, I'm super critical of myself. But at the same time, when I take that moment, and I seriously say this and seriously hear this when you're watching this video, if you walk away with nothing else, when you go through your transition, pause and celebrate yourself. Celebrate everything that you have overcome. And I feel myself almost coming to tears because
Mm-hmm.
you made it. And the person that you were 6 months ago, who maybe have felt like you wouldn't have made it, you are now that person 6 months later. So who will you be in the next 6 months, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years? And sometimes we can't think that far ahead, but as you grow and change, if you don't acknowledge what you've been through, you will always fight and push yourself harder to accomplish more, not realizing what you have already accomplished. That is something Ms. Kim has taught me, and it's something that I leave with people so much because just that little shift that you do, the little shift of focusing not on the problem, but on the solution, but focusing on all you've overcome because you've now had so many solutions and so many opportunities where you made mistakes and could have backtracked, but you pushed yourself forward and you've gained so much more. You're already somebody you couldn't recognize. So who will you be if you continue to do that and you continue to take those moments? And today I was in the car from that parent teacher conference crying because I am the mother that I've always wanted to be.
So when you go back and you look at what you're explaining to the audience, what you'll find in the deacon that it speaks of ethical, emotional ethics. All right. You can't have emotional mastery or stability without having an ethical practice. And the funny thing about that is that this North Node in Aries is in your 10th house. And so there is ethics again. That's your Saturn house. It's Saturn telling you, okay, I've been sitting across from the day you've been born, and I've been calling you to a career and the ethics that I display, the structure. And I know that this can go over a person's head, but I'm tying it in because she's a Cancer. Well, she's becoming the opposite of just a stay-at-home mom or someone that is emotionally charging the home. She's actually taking on Capricorn characteristics, which can be oppositional. She could come into contact with Capricorns like me, and I we push each other to become what we're supposed to because we're on the opposite side. So in her 10th house, I am is sitting there saying the ethical practices that you give, share them into other people's professional lifestyle. I mean, to me, you wouldn't be able to sometimes understand it unless you got into these discussions with us and you start looking at your chart. But the number 11 is, it adds up to 2. And that means that there is a transformation even in that number, but 1129 is a critical place where it's asking for the change in the individual at all times. So before we close out, do you want to add anything?
No, nothing else.
Moon and
I think
Scorpios.
the only thing I am gonna add, shameless plug, if you're not in these classes, which I know you're not because I'm in these classes, you need to be in these classes. You need to get to know yourself. And
That's
it
beautiful.
might seem like it might seem like a weird way to do it for some people. But if you're watching this video, you obviously are into our weird way. So come on.
Weird way. Oh,
Information is in the box below. Maybe you need to click subscribe. Maybe you need to go look at some other videos on this channel too and get this information because everything you need is inside of you. And if you
yeah.
unlock it with this key, it's gonna transform who you are and transform your trajectory. Everything I've ever needed was in my chart. And figuring that out, I really sat down one day and I said, well, what I've been doing this whole time?
Yeah,
Where have
we're
I been
not
looking
taught
this whole
that.
time?
We're breaking through a lot of illusions. And that's something we can talk about another time. But being born with the number 11 in your chart, the number 29, the number 22, um, those are critical numbers. And what happens is that you learn from them. This is where you go into numerology. So where we have been born with all of these tales and fabrications, we're breaking through for others to understand that it's okay for you to educate yourself. in anything that you're being called to without it being demonized, because even the demon had to learn how to be a demon. I just, or unlearn, I don't know. That's change. Learn how to be a demon or unlearn how to be one. So it's going to work either way. And everything is demonized. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm going into that and I'm tearing it down, but once your mind understands the logic of situations, you won't be tormented by anything again. It's what you don't know that you fear. So here,
Mm-hmm.
it's what you don't know that you fear. So all of us um, are going through transformations for a better consciousness and a better awareness in our soul evolution. At the end of the day, I want to say thank you for those young women that are always in the background supporting. They do their thing. They've learned a lot in our classes. My hat off to them, and we'll be back next week. Be very, and when I say be it, be very cautious with the way that you speak to people. Be very cautious with driving. Be very cautious with who you share your ideas with. Be very cautious in how you're growing. If you see that it's something you need to pluck up that's not producing, do that so that you can grow more. Be cautious as an individual and how you handle life, because whatever you give life, life is going to give it back to you. And that's what we've all learned. So God bless you, and you all have a good week.